So good morning, and thank you so much for joining our panel this morning. All of us here have been very fortunate to have been involved in Israeli art for many years. Rivka Saker, on my left, founded Artis, and also, years before, the first sales of Israeli art run by Sotheby's in Israel. To my right is Professor Adi Stern, the president of the Bezalel Academy of Art in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, and on our far right, Andrea Meislin of Meislin Projects, again, a great supporter and advocate of Israeli art. Now, I'm Jennifer Roth. I work at Sotheby's. I'm also involved in our Israeli art sales, and I'm going to moderate the panel, but just give you a little overview of some of the highlights of the historical movement of Israeli art over the years. And frankly, one has to admit at the outset that in America, Israeli art has had a bit of a bad rap, right? When people think about Israeli art, perhaps the first thing that comes to their minds is klezmer orchestras and dancing rabbis. Not exactly the Israeli art that has gained prominence over the years on the international stage. But I think you'll all agree with me that over the last 10, 15 years perhaps, this going back to 1999, so perhaps 20 years, Israeli art has left the shores of the Mediterranean and encountered the world stage. Just as art from other countries has joined the global conversation, so has Israeli art, with incredibly powerful, emotive, interesting works of art that speak both to the local situation, the local population in Israel, and also to world concerns. Here we have Adi Ness, one of Israel's most celebrated photographers, really taking on art history in referencing the famous painting of the Last Supper, but turning it around and showing a mess hall of Israeli soldiers, perhaps, as always can be in the army, a Last Supper in a different way. This photograph has sold 3 times in Sotheby's international and Israeli art sales. As you see, first for 100,000, a few years later for, I can't actually read the numbers, 320, and then again more recently for really a record price for an Israeli photograph. Sigalit Landau, on the other hand, has also, through being shown at the Venice Biennale, drawn attention to Israeli art in a very emotional and personal way, such as with her video of the Dead Sea, where the sweetness of watermelons, one of the iconic sort of fruits of Israel, is contrasted with the equally iconic salty Dead Sea. So you have the sweetness and the tears merged. And many of you may be familiar with this video as it takes front and center place at the Israel Museum's new Israeli art wing, which indeed has moved forward. Years ago, at the Israel Museum, the Israeli art was sort of buried in the back of the museum. Now it's very prominently displayed, and that, I think, is a wonderful example of really Israeli art arriving at its place as part of the international art world. People date the history of Israeli art to the founding of the Bezalel Academy, and we'll hear a bit more about that soon. In the early years following 1906, with the Academy getting going, Israeli artists really put their talents to the service of the founding of the state, the development of the land, and Ze'ev Rabban was one of the exponents of this Eretz Yisrael style, as was Reuven, who shows us here the first fruits of the land, Israelis coming back from a long exile in the Middle East, in the Eastern European countries. You can just imagine the shock that European artists like Reuven, who had grown up in Romania, felt when he encountered this incredibly hot, brilliantly lit land soaked in the desert sun. And as they saw the land coming to life again under renewed Jewish settlement. Reuben painted many views of Jerusalem, and one sees in this landscape a figure of a pastoralist with a donkey walking up towards the city, a moment of great optimism where it seemed as if Arabs and Jews were going to inhabit this land in peace and harmony. And he takes upon himself a very naive style to show a young land coming to life again after being dormant for many, many years. These are the most sought after of the traditional Israeli paintings and can sell in the many hundreds of thousands of dollars. Other artists really turned to the dramatic events around the foundation of the state, such as Marcel Janco's Homme de la Paix from 1948. We also see artists addressing the kibbutz life, such as Yohanan Simon in this wonderful family at leisure, showing the short hours where the families come together in the afternoon when the field work is done and enjoy some quality time, as they say, mothers, fathers, and children all together. These are works which are now seen as really epitomizing this very romantic time as we look at it back now in Israeli life around the years of the founding of the state, and these are among the most sought after Israeli paintings. As soon as the state was established, a new art movement arose, the New Horizons. And here we see Israeli artists rejecting storytelling. They no longer felt that it was necessary to tell the story of the founding of Zionism, but could turn to art for art's sake and join the conversation of the world, which was, in the art world at least, around abstract expressionism and a much more open and independent view. Ardon was another artist who started with the New Horizons group and really continued to develop his art in a very independent way. This is the most expensive painting that is sold at auction at Sotheby's, over $800,000, and this is the high point at auction. Other artists have actually sold for more. You'll hear later from Michal Rovner, who sold through Sotheby's private sales a major installation for over $1 million. Israeli artists also, once they joined the global conversation, continued to engage with movements such as pop art, for example, here with David Reeves' Camel Time, a real, typically Andy Warhol engagement with popular culture. Nir Hod, who we're going to hear speaking a little bit later as well, engaging with the ideas of glamour and celebrity and fame, but with a particular Israeli twist here that the few moments that Israeli women soldiers enjoy, where they are the focus of attention as they leave the army and have their photograph taken. This wonderful triptych was sold at Sotheby's quite a number of years ago, just as Nir Hod was beginning to really develop an international reputation, and everybody just loved this image, not least because the most beautiful of the women in the middle was, in fact, Nir himself. Michal Rovner, who you're going to hear from a bit later as well, really brought Israeli art to a new level when she had her major retrospective at the Whitney Museum in 2002. Michal went on to represent Israel at the Venice Biennale and then was quickly snapped up by Pace Gallery, Pace Wildenstein Gallery, Pace as it's known today. And indeed, they still show her work. She's got a major show on in New York right now. So that's a quick bird's eye view of the historical Israeli art scene. And now I'd like to invite Professor Adi Stern to tell us a little bit about the training of Israeli artists and the education of Israeli artists at Bezalel. And here you can move these along.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Jennifer. With your permission, I'll say a few words about what is Bezalel, what is history, and where we are now. So the Bezalel Academy of Arts and Design was founded in 1906 in Jerusalem, and this is way before the Technion or the Hebrew University. And in fact, Bezalel is the first cultural institution to be established in Israel, and this is clearly way before the state was established. And I should mention that I think it's remarkable that the first institution in the country was an arts and design school. And it wasn't actually, it was arts and crafts at the time, it wasn't design. So we are now celebrating the 111th anniversary this year, and this is not very common in Israel. It was established by Boris Schatz, Professor Boris Schatz, who was a Jewish kind of Michiganer who came from, he was born in Lithuania and then came to Israel from Bulgaria, and he decided he had this idea of establishing an art school in Jerusalem. And this founding of the school was a Zionist act, a very clear Zionist act, an act of creation, of vision, and it's also worth mentioning maybe the anecdote that Eliezer ben Yehuda was teaching Hebrew at Bezalel in the very first years. So, as Jennifer already mentioned, Israeli art was born at Bezalel. And even the Israel Museum, the important Israeli Museum, was part of Bezalel before it became independent. In every random list of successful Israeli artists in Israel and abroad, you will find that the vast majority are Bezalel graduates, and many of them are lecturers at Bezalel today. So as we discussed today, the links and the relationship between Israeli art and the international scene, I want to show you very briefly a few works and names of our graduates, just to have an idea. So we start with Nahum Gutman, Michal Rovner, that was already mentioned, that has shown at the Louvre, Sigalit Landau at the MoMA, Noma Bar, who's an illustrator who shows working for all the major publications worldwide. And this might be the moment to say that the Academy today, we're dealing with many different disciplines, from fine arts to the crafts, jewelry design, fashion design, architecture, industrial design, visual communication, what used to be called graphic design, photography, of course, and maybe I forgot something. This is also Noma Bar, especially for you this morning. Architecture, clearly. And I apologize for not finding Hillary, but I did find her husband here behind Tony Blair. So this is Noma Bar, Nir Hod, who's here with us. And you'll hear from him later on. Ran Chen, who's an architect working in New York, highly successful. Ilit Azulay, again at the MoMA. Daniel Charney, who's a graduate of the Industrial Design Department, and he's a curator working in London curated the show for the V&A. And Ron Arad, who I don't think I have to introduce, but I should mention that he's not a Bezalel graduate. He studied with us and he ran away after 2 years, I think. We left for London, but he was at Bezalel. David Polonsky and Yoni Goodman were the art director and chief animator for Waltz with Bashir, which is was an Academy Award nominee and the Golden Globe winner, a film by Ari Fullman. And we also do, as I mentioned, fashion, accessories, shoes, interactive comics. I don't know why this is not working. Anyway, let's try again. We don't have the movie. Interactive. Last try. No, it's not that.
Maybe Udi can get it.
That's
on.
strange.
You have to
Anyway.
click on it.
Oh, okay. This is just to show that we work at Bezalel from very, very traditional and antique techniques like silk screen and ceramics and jewelry to cutting-edge technology like this, or like a project we've done with General Motors a few years ago. They came to Bezalel asking us to think with them about the potential of the rear passengers' windows as touch screens, and what can we do with it. And this is one of the apps students developed. This was idea of sharing actually your window with someone else who's using the app somewhere else around the globe. So you can be driving in Tel Aviv, sweating in Tel Aviv, and having on your window, I don't know, the North Pole or something. And you can have a radio station, local radio station. So now we're in Tokyo. And a movie made for Barney's a few years ago by two Bezalel graduates. That's a very short movie. So this was made by two Bezalel graduates on the very first year after graduation, just to give you the idea. So just to conclude, what is Bezalel? I think Bezalel most above all is the spirit, the idea, and the idea of groundbreaking creation. It's about innovation, it's about perfectionism and professionalism, and it's about relentlessly really looking for innovation. Bezalel is an energizer, it's a magnet, it's a generator, kind of a generator of ambition. It's all about striving for excellence. This is the Bezalel ethos, and this is the tradition for more than 100 years. And it's really all about this ambition and wish to do something new, something that no one ever done before you, to create, to innovate. And I should say that innovation is a very trendy word today, and it is used mostly in the high-tech scene and in the startups domain. But we do innovation for more than 100 years. So just to conclude, this is how it started, and this is how it will look tomorrow. Well, not tomorrow, but in 4 years' time. Bezalel is moving to the city center of Jerusalem, to a prime location, a magnificent building planned by Sana architects, Pritzker Prize winners from Tokyo. And I'm sure the impact of this move on the city of Jerusalem, the city center of Jerusalem, will be immense. And with this, I thank you.
Excuse me. Okay, so I'm Andrea Meislin. Hold on. I'm gonna write this one. Oh. How do I get it to go?
Okay. Yeah.
How do I get it to go back to my? Oh, don't look, everybody. I don't want. There you go. Oh. Oh, are you doing it, Udi? Okay, there we go. Yeah, that one. So I'll give a Reader's Digest version of how I came to open the gallery. My husband and I and family here moved to Israel in 2000. I had been a curator at the Phoenix Art Museum and decided I would transition into working with photography because I'd been a collector for many years. So I contacted the photo curator at the Israel Museum, cold, and said, I'm coming, I have all these credentials, practical, academic. And he wrote back and said, great, call me when you get here. And I did, and he hired me on the spot. And, well, first I should say I was in his office and looked up and saw these amazing photographs and said, who did these? Why have I never seen them or even heard of any of the artists before? And he said, they're all Israeli, and how would you have heard of them? So it just sort of stuck in my head that there is this very rich area and history of photography in Israel. Worked there for 2 years. We moved back to New York in 2002. I privately worked with a handful of artists, and then the summer of 2003, Rivka contacted me. We went for a walk around Central Park or the reservoir, and it was a particularly bad time in Israel, and Americans were not really traveling there. It was the second Intifada. So Rivka had this amazing idea to have an Israeli, it was called the Israeli Art Week in New York, and it would be Sotheby. Sotheby's would have the first ever sale of Israeli art, and Rivka created really interesting programming to sort of support and promote the sale, and in return, the sale would promote and support the other activities. So Rivka asked if I would put together a show of contemporary Israeli photography, and I said, with the greatest of pleasure. And I decided that the last thing I should show is expected imagery. I didn't want to show any soldiers or the kotel or any sort of emotional immigrant scenes. Decided to focus on images of the land of the country, social, political, religious, agricultural, and artists who were working right then and there, nothing really before the year 2000. So this first one is by an artist named Barry Friedlander, he had won an award at the Tel Aviv Museum called the Constantiner Award the year before, and I was mesmerized because I stood in front of it. It's a little bit hard to see on this screen, but it's a beach in Tel Aviv, and when you stand in front of it, you see that it's not possible it could have been captured in one shot. So then after speaking with him and learning, he photographed it from multiple angles. Oops. All right, there we go. Multiple angles, and then back on his computer, put it back together to create a unified whole. So I'll show you a couple of images from this exhibition. So this is Barry Friedlander's The Beach in Tel Aviv. That's not my slide. Udi. Should I try pressing to the next one? There it is, but it's not where it should be. She needs to come up. So if I'm really going to show pictures about the use of land in Israel, this is Eastern European tourists being baptized in the Jordan River by Noel Jabbour. This is a little girl running in Mea Shearim by Lior Laor. I think it's one of the most wonderful, it's really one of the first color images that I saw and included in the show. So it was supposed to be about a 6 or 8 week exhibit in March 2004. The opening night was a benefit for Bezalel that was chaired at the time, American Friends by Jennifer, and we were mobbed, and the gallery was it wasn't called a gallery, it was a pop-up before the word pop-up became known. It was wildly successful. I think we had hundreds of people walk in and buy things. And at the end of the exhibit, I said to myself and my husband and children, what if the space is available, it's in a great location in Chelsea, right in between major galleries, maybe I should keep this and do it. And I did. So the first exhibition decided to do a solo show for Barry Friedlander. I actually hired the photo curator from the Israel Museum to curate the exhibit and write the text to give it validity when I contacted curators in America. And it was really quite a great show. This is called Hamabul, and I won't give you all the details of it, but suffice to say, he took the footage in the spring of 2003 over a 4-month period from his window in the Florentine neighborhood, right just by Neve Tzedek. And then it took him about another 6 months to put it together to create this fictitious, sort of based in reality scene. So we had the show, and I worked really hard contacting curators, and lo and behold, the chief curator from MoMA came in to see the show, stood in front of this and said, I'm not sure what this is, but I know it's great. I want you to tell me why it's great, and then I want to buy it. And I said, okay. That was so easy. So from there, we took this picture and others to international art fairs in Paris, in London, California, Italy, really trying to expand the knowledge of Israeli photography. Not necessarily, I mean, of course, the client base to keep the gallery in business, but also curators and writers. So we did a show 18 months after that show for Barry. We did another show for him. This is called The Blessing, and you can't really tell from the slide, but it is about 15 feet long, and he photographed, it was a scene on, is it Lag BaOmer? Lag BaOmer, thank you. And he, every foot or so, he would stand in front of this group of people and photograph near ground, mid-ground, background, distance. And so at the end of the day, he had thousands of photographs, and then it took him months to put it back together. So a very cinematic scene. So we did this show for him in the gallery, and all the MoMA curators came to a special opening, and the next day offered him a solo show at MoMA the next year, which was really quite amazing. So I should also say that before I show any photographs, I have to hold a certain amount of information. They have to reveal the technology of the time they're made in. Not have to, but obviously it's preferable. It should also hold some information, historical, social, political, of the contemporary of the time, and it should be visually stunning. So it's rare to find an artist that actually is able to sort of encompass all three and then also stand behind it. So all the while I was doing group shows, solo shows. I'll just show you a handful of key images. Don't want to monopolize the time. This is an image by Pavel Wolberg, a Russian immigrant. You can actually see the title of it, A Checkpoint, and you can see why it's quite powerful. And it's an edition of 5, and I believe we sold 4 of them to really great museums in America. I also work closely with Micha Bar-Am, sort of the father of he has this massive archive of the history of the country in pictures, and this is the return from Entebbe in 1976. Really quite a remarkable historical photograph, evocative, personal, beautiful, and this is just a really fun picture of a parade, but you can also see that he's working a little bit, at the time, the way that he saw this is special and unique and really reflects his talent. This next one is by Vardi Kahana. This was a show I'm really, really proud to have produced. It was called One Family. It's her mother and her sisters, and it's difficult to see in the pictures, but they entered Auschwitz as teenagers. Their numbers are consecutive. They survived. The next picture in the series, which I'm not showing here, is her father and his 2 brothers, and then the whole project is who and what came from these 5 marriages. And they range today from non-Jew married in Copenhagen, super, super left-wing, to ultra-Haredi in Hebron. So it's called Mishpacha Echad. We produced it at the Tel Aviv Museum. We showed this project literally around the world, even in Berlin, and it's had fantastic reception and press. Did not go on, the consecutive numbers did not go unnoticed. This is a picture by Naomi Leshem. She had special access to Israel's active military runways. Her husband was a pilot. We also took her work around the world, and she's had great success. It's a shame that you can't really see the beautiful color and composition of this picture. Okay, moving along. Sharon Yaari, he is a Bezalel star and important teacher. He's very well regarded. His work has been acquired by museums also across America. This is Yigal Shem Tov, who was the head of photography at Bezalel undergraduate for many, many years. No interest in having a commercial career, but this is a project that he did in the 80s. It was called Family Album, and he never showed it, and it wouldn't have been popular, but we showed it in 2015, and the nostalgia aspect attracted much attention and acclaim for him, because if you look at this now, it does bring you back to 1980, or even, this is probably from 1960. Really proud to do the show for him. Then there's Elite Azulai. I got a phone call. It must be 2009, I think. Did someone show that? You showed another one. That I had to run, not walk, to see the MFA show at Bezalel, to see this artist who creates fictitious environments from thousands of pieces. Well, I couldn't go, but I called her, and she didn't have a video on her computer, so she bought a little camera, and we spoke for about 3 hours one day and learned all about her, and we decided to start working together. Took her work to Paris. The Pompidou bought a major, massive piece. It was edition of 3, and they said, no, we want it unique. Will you make it unique for us? And we said we would. So the Pompidou owns not either of these, but... And we met the MoMA. So the curator from the Pompidou left and became the chief curator at MoMA. Replaced the curator that I had worked with Barry Friedlander. And he remained interested in her work and acquired this amazing installation of, I think it's 83 pieces that she did in Berlin. And the next slide, you can see it installed in MoMA's new photography, their biennial that was last year at this time. So these, all the artists I spoke about, I should have said at the beginning, live in Israel. And I felt at the beginning, and I still think that we do, I don't want to say a service, but we are able to provide an audience, curators, writers, collectors, of people interested in Israeli art, not all of whom are Jewish, by the way, and not all of whom even care that the artists are Israeli. It's just great art, and it's a place to see art. So then there's a handful of artists who live in New York that I've worked with over the years. This is Ofri Kanani. I think we did 4 shows with her. Asaf Evron, who lives in Chicago, teaches at the Art Institute of Chicago. Here's a nice surprise. This looks like one of the Bezalel pictures, one of the early ones that Adi showed, but in fact it's by Ido Michieli, who's here. It's contemporary. This is a carpet. He should actually speak about it, but it's a carpet that was made in Afghanistan based on his design. It's one small piece of hundreds, would you say? How many pieces? Okay, but isn't it 100 images? Anyway, so there's many layers. There are historical, artistic, political layers, but it really references the sort of origins, this arts and crafts movement of Bezalel in the early years, and he's working on some other great projects we're very excited about. Last picture I'm going to show you is Michal Safdie. She's married to Moshe Safdie, but she did this project. She was walking on the Tayelet just north of the Hilton and noticed a closed-off area and peeked in and saw that on Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday it's just for women. So she did this very big project. I forget the year of it. Does it say it there? Can't see. Anyway, we did the show maybe 5 years ago, and it was wonderful. And just about a month ago, we were contacted by the New Yorker because of the burkini controversy. They did a whole spread on this exhibit in the New Yorker. So that's where I am. And now I'm going to introduce Rivka Saker, who is the epicenter of everything that I spoke about.
So very nice to be here. I'll tell you a little bit about my personal history so you know how it all came about. But I grew up in Tel Aviv, really had a lot of artist friends, And in 1983, I was asked to open Sotheby's office in Tel Aviv and started the office and started also to travel much more around the art world, if it was to auctions or fairs, and meet a lot of artists and collectors, and actually realized that the art we have in Israel is exceptionally good for a small place like this, really always interesting and up to date, if I look historically or today. And I felt that it was really under-noticed around the world and didn't get the right exposure. And I would say especially in America, because in the 80s and 90s, a lot of European museums really were coming to Israel to look at the art and did a lot of shows. But in America, in the 90s and the early 2000s, it was really rare to see an Israeli art exhibition, except that some of the artists that already lived here and had, like Michal, and people that really could have the local contact and develop their own career. In 2004, Sotheby's decided to move the sales from Israel after 20 years to New York, because it's a policy of the company was to move, part of the globalization, to move to the big centers and to have sales just between London, Paris, Hong Kong, and New York. And we decided that the right place for Israeli art sales will be New York. And around this, I thought, well, this is a good opportunity really to create some more events around the sale, and following a kind of a tradition that was in New York, to have a British Art Week or an Indian Art Week or a Chinese Art Week. I thought, why not have a contemporary Israeli Art Week? And we really arranged a lot of events. But since then, we started calling it Artis, which is actually in English, it's Art Israel. It was like a shortening, but it also became really kind of, was accepted easily.
Yeah. This one. On your right.
Okay, and a few years later, the first year we did a week, the year after we did a month, then we did a season, and then we felt there is actually work the whole year around. And in 2007, we started a non-for-profit in the US called Artis, and since then, so it's now as a 501c3, almost 10 years, but we are really working constantly since 2004. The program developed slowly. It was mainly financed by private donation and different collaborations that I created over the years. But since then, we have a permanent person that runs the organization in New York, Yael Reinhardt, that unfortunately couldn't be here today because she just had a baby, so she's on a maternity leave. But she has done a great job together with a team, and really working for 10 years constantly on trying to create a system which will kind of help and create a support system for the artists after they finished Bezalel, they started to have a career in Israel as photographer, but create some kind of an organization that will enable them to contact to the international art scene. The first thing we did in 2007 was to decide about a system of bringing in an organized way groups of curators, museum directors, and writers to Israel. And since then, we have brought over 170 people, but maybe, and can we move forward? I don't want to. Okay, so since then we developed different programs. One of them is the research trips that I just mentioned. So we bring regularly art professionals to Israel. Another program is grants for exhibitions around the world. People apply for grants from all over. I'll have a little bit more details soon afterwards. And special project we started only in 2011 was a professional career development to artists. Because one of the problems was that artists have that from the days they finish school, they're basically alone in the studio. And there is very little opportunities to create not only dialogue, but also to find a way or a system that can help you develop your career as a one-person business. So we took on this, and we did it until now for 175 artists in Israel. And the public programs. This is actually part of the artist career development that we are doing. It's Einat Amir. She was supported by us here at the MFA program in Colombia. She came back to Israel, did the professional development, since then participated in Performa here in New York. This is getting ready for a show she had in Sweden last year. If you look around this map, we have developed these grant programs that people apply regularly, twice a year, from all over the world to ask for support just for Israeli artists. It can be a one-person show, it can be a group show, it can be a special project. We have done over the years, as you can see, support from Scandinavia to Australia to Africa to South America. And in the last few years, it's really spreading out even more. Part of the professional development and the follow-up we do with the artist, if I look at Michal Helfman, she's an artist that just now, actually her career starts to blossom, although she's already for many years a very important teacher in Bezalel, teaching at the MFA program. She was part of the program in 2004, but did the professional development in 2014, met some curators that loved her work, had a show in New York in 2015, another show in Berlin that we supported in 2015, and now is showing at the San Paulo Biennial, a great project. This is part of the research trip in the Israel Museum with James Snyder. And this is about the research trips. So also application for research trips are coming from all over the world. And now we have actually had curators from 18 countries, from 55 cities. Altogether, I think it's not the full number, probably over 180 people. That if we check the success result, we had about 90% of them react to the trips and really create projects with Israeli artists. This is another form of public programs that we do, which are meetings, sometimes in home, like this, where we did with Barry Friedland and Andrea on the Upper East Side. But we did also other projects, like on a larger scale with Nir Hod at the Crosby Hotel, which was very successful. Part of the public programs started research project, and with the help of the Warhol Foundation, for the first time an American foundation, we actually managed to create a research that was somehow not or looked over by the Israeli scene, which we learned about 40 years of Israel video. And we used 3 curators to curate 4 hours. And this program is now, this year, was shown in April, opened up in the new museum, and is planned for the next 18 months to be shown in 10 museums around the world. And probably will continue more, because we actually aim to create from this video program an international art course that every art program can use as an international course. So that's part of the social media that is growing. You can see the spread of the social media around the world. But just before I finish, I want really to encourage you that we have a great website which has the most information that you can get about Israeli art, from historical articles to regular coverage, profiles of over 200 Israeli artists, videos with Israeli artists, and an opportunity to learn. If you come across a name and you want to know something about it, it's a great opportunity to learn. Oh, how do I go back? Okay. All right. Okay, and one more thing, if you do open, we also have a great program that artists that have been working with Artis are actually supporting back the organizations and creating editions for the organizations, so you can look at the work, including fantastic works that we have by Nir that you will see later. Okay.
So thank you, Rivka, thank you, Adi, and thank you, Andrea. We're going to take a few questions from you, but I did have one comment and perhaps one or two questions that we thought were important, that I thought were important to ask. Firstly, to say that you, as an audience of Israeli Americans, are encouraged to get involved with the promotion of Israeli art through either supporting Bezalel or Artis, or buying Israeli art through various organizations, including galleries and the auction house. This is a wonderful way that you can introduce a fantastic, vibrant culture to the Americans and your fellow Israelis. So we really, really encourage you to be involved. In fact, one of the questions that can perhaps ask is Israeli art an ambassador for today? Adi.
I think it's a good question. I'm not sure whether is it an ambassador or should it be an ambassador for Israel. I think it might be different, or we need to develop a different approach speaking about art, fine arts, as opposed to design. It might be different. I'm not sure artists want to be ambassadors. In fact, of nothing, not a country, no nothing. And I think that fine arts or fine artists in many cases have this instinct of being opponents, and they want to reject and to object surely the state. So I'm not sure whether artists should be or see themselves as ambassadors for Israel. It might be different for designers, because designers do projects in many various disciplines, and if they do, for instance, if what we do in Bezalel, we have a division or a program called Relevant Design for Disaster. So this is working and developing projects, design projects that can help humans in disaster, like earthquakes or terror attacks, etc. So is this a good ambassador for Israel? I think it is. But it was not meant to be. I mean, it was not made as to be an ambassador. I think the international presence of designers and artists, in a way, make them ambassadors. If we see great Israeli art or great Israeli design in exhibitions, in museums, in galleries, in fairs, then they are, in a sense, ambassadors, but they're not political ambassadors or diplomatic ambassadors. They're ambassadors of spirit, of the Israeli culture and the Israeli spirit, and they do introduce or present to the world a different Israel than what they usually see on the news. So that's
Rivka or Andrea, do you want to add anything?
You know, I think maybe when you look at today's world of globalization, and everybody wants to be a little bit, or wanted for a period to be like anyone else, I think today we are really seeing that people are going backwards to look at, not to talk about Brexit, but to look back at their kind of special look. I think art as it is, it actually presents a new interpretation, a new look at things that are happening around us, about life, about everything around us. So I think an immediate response of an Israeli artist will always be Israeli and will keep some of its Jewishness or Israeliness in its DNA. So,
Something to say.
Any
about
questions?
that. Oh, I was just going to say
Go
one
ahead.
thing. When the first exhibition, when I put together the first exhibition in 2004, I think it was, Adi Ness and Nir Hod, Michal Rovner were well established, known internationally. And I showed this work that had never been seen, that was really about the land. And I had someone come in, he ended up being a trustee of Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, who said, "Thank you." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "I never knew Israel had green grass." So, but that was a long time ago. Fast forward to today, I would say almost, I haven't seen any land-based art in years. I don't know if it's a specific, if it's intentional, if it's an aversion. You just don't see, you see very, very few landscapes or representations. But I will say that most Israeli artists, the ones that I work with, would much prefer to be seen in a broader context of international artists than to be known as an Israeli artist and play any role in that arena.
But I just want to say, I just recently returned from Cuba.
Oh, hold on. Here's a
What is
mic.
that?
Go ahead. A gift.
So I was just saying that I just recently returned from Cuba, and it has a wonderful art scene, also globally. And I could say definitely that a lot of Cuban life and culture was shown to the outside world through its art. And being, close society, that was so important. So I think that even if artists are not formally ambassadors, they are definitely ambassadors of life globally. And I think that a lot of people who want to know about Israel, and definitely a trip to Israel is not enough to really understand. Through art, they can really learn so much more about the culture and history.
Good point. Any other questions? Otherwise, perhaps I will ask, why do we feel, we who've been in the field for so long, why do we feel it's important to educate Israelis about art and culture?
Israelis outside of Israel?
And inside of Israel.
It's important to educate everyone about art and culture. About their own art
I
and
think
culture.
basically, when you talk about a strong art scene, if you take, for example, Germany, the German artists are always part of a scene, but it's because they have such a strong interland, actually, the state and the tradition of collecting, but also a state support. So one of the reasons to start Artis was also because you have the British Council and the Mondrian Foundation and the French Institute. All the countries really have quite a substantial support system for their art and culture. And they really value the art and culture as an important thing. In Israel, it's a very small part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has a minute budget to maybe help ship a work to an exhibition or help to buy a ticket for an artist, but not really a full support system that can create. So this was also one of the reasons why I felt it's so important to create this system. A funny incident, if you look into the 60s, at the time of the Iron Curtain, it was actually the CIA that promoted the pop art in Europe and was financing exhibitions all over Europe to show that America is not only good in winning the Second World War, but is actually a place that art and culture are developing. So I think missing this support system in Israel is crucial to help actually create a stronger image and acknowledgement to the art and culture. And I would say, even if you look at, is Israeli art or Jewish art, is it the same? Is everything that Israeli, is it Jewish or not? For many years it was a debate, but I think there is no doubt about it that today, when 50% of the Jews around the world live in Israel, and so much creativity in all fields of art and culture, from writers and poets and dance and music and art. Everything is created there. No doubt that all these Hebrew creations will be part of the Jewish tradition. So the separation, I think, if you look forward, will be really artificial. Today you can still separate them, but in the future it will be probably one.
Go ahead, one more question. I wonder if you can pass that little box back.
The little box.
This is for the entire panel. I wonder if you create any kind of relationship with Israeli American artists who live in America. And I know you talked a lot about the Israelis who live in Israel, but I'm talking about the artist, the Israeli who lives in America, and if there's any relationship with in Israel or from the other side.
All right. No. Yeah. So I think the second panel, which will have Michal Rovner, Nir Hod, Noam Segal, and Doreen, will have actually part of their conversation. I think will answer this in a better way.
When is this other panel?
Now,
Right after
immediately
this.
after.
10 o'clock, yeah.
No, I'll answer briefly that I receive submissions, I would say maybe 10 or 15 a month from artists living all over the world who are Jewish or Israeli, and it's rare that I would pick up an artist who doesn't come recommended by a fellow artist or a curator or writer or someone who I know and respect. Having said that, it can happen, but the art has to be really, really interesting. It has to be socially relevant. It has to be stunning. It's not just about sales. So that's my opinion.
Doreen. An Israeli innovation, no doubt.
I just wanted to say it's hard to get a sense of what pioneers these people are. I mean, that really cracked open the door for contemporary Israeli art like nobody else. And it's very known that in kind of neighborhoods and cities, first it gets populated by the artists and the art world, and then kind of everybody follows. So I think art is so important to show the culture and to bring out the culture of Israel, and it's incredible, and I just want to say thank you for all of your great work. You convinced me. I mean, 10 years ago when I heard about it, it was hard to imagine that it was going to happen, and really is amazing what you've done.
Yeah, and today Doreen is on the board of Artis, and really.
One more question over by the door, right.
This question is more for Adi, since he lives in Israel. In the last few years, we see a lot of pressure from the government or Ministry of Culture or Education to have the artists, mainly in the film industry and theater, to align with some government lines. Do you see that as well in the more visual and artwork, that you get the pressure to be more institutional?
It's a good question. We don't really feel it, except for in the surroundings, as you say. It happens, and we read all about it in the news. I can't say we feel it in the school in Bezalel, but nevertheless, I think as society is changing in Israel, I see and I find art education, and what we are doing with our students, highly important and becoming more and more important. The discussion around art, around humanism, pluralism, all about critical thinking and looking at society around us in a critical way is becoming more and more crucial due to what's going on around us. So there is some kind of a threat that we feel, but it's not, I can't say that we really feel it in our everyday life for the moment, at least not for now.
Thanks to you all, and please pick up some of the materials that are outside on the tables, and feel free to contact us. We have business cards, and at 10 o'clock, in about 15 minutes, the second panel on Israeli art will commence. Thank you all.